Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are really stepping into a different world. We're setting aside the modern forensics lab, the DNA and the databases,
hmm
and we're going into the mind of a master detective. All of it set within the very stately ivy-covered walls of a grand old English manor.
It's a perfect setting, and the source material we're working from today, it really is something else. It reads less like a story and more like a
The
blueprint.
blueprint, yeah, that's a great way to put it. A blueprint for intellectual victory. It meticulously charts the path from just absolute chaos to total, almost surgical clarity.
That's precisely right. We are exploring the anatomy of pure deduction. And the challenge here is a classic paradox, what mystery writers call the perfect locked room scenario.
The locked room.
It starts with a foundational impossibility. You have this legendary priceless diamond. It vanishes from its case at a place called Blackwood Manor. The case is secured by a custom lock.
Oh.
And the only key, the only key remains securely fastened around the owner's neck. There's no forced entry, no broken glass, and crucially, no missing key.
The audacity of it is just.
Fairly.
It's breathtaking.
Right.
And it suggests that the brilliance required to solve it has to be on that same level.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to track the investigation of Mr. Alistair Finch, a private detective who is, well, he's famous for his almost obsessive nature. We're going to trace every single step. We want to isolate that specific combination of observations, the tiny behavioral tells, the weak alibis, the atmospheric notes, and, yeah, the overlooked physical clues that he puts together to crack an illusion that was designed, really, to fool a rational mind.
Think of this deep dive as a kind of intellectual archaeology. We need to move past the big theatrical setup of the crime, the locked room, and uncover the, frankly, mundane truth that's hiding in plain sight.
Right. It's never as magical as it seems.
Never. We're isolating those specific little nuggets of evidence that allowed Finch to move from the realm of this is impossible to the realm of simple, cold logistics. We want to understand not just what he discovered, but how his unique way of thinking, his methodology, forced him to connect dots that, well, everyone else just dismissed as noise.
Okay, so let's begin by introducing the man himself, Mr. Alistair Finch. The source material spends a lot of time establishing his character, and what immediately leaps out is his profound, deep devotion to order.
Yes, and that's not just a personality quirk.
No, it's everything. He's not the trench coat and fedora type of detective we might imagine. He's a man whose mind operates like a perfectly cataloged library.
That distinction is paramount. Finch's fastidiousness isn't just, a quirk. It is his core investigative methodology. The notes describe him as someone who requires absolute precision in his life.
Like what?
Well, his books are arranged rigorously by author, not just on the shelf, but perfectly aligned. His pencils are all sharpened to a specific, identical, perfect point. And then there's the ritual of his tea.
Ah, yes, the tea.
Earl Grey, always. It has to be brewed for exactly 4 minutes. Not 350, not 410. 4 minutes.
And this obsession with precision, it translates directly into his work.
It has to. The logic is, if he can spot a fraction of a millimeter out of place on his own desk, he's exponentially better equipped to spot a tiny anomaly in a complex crime scene, something everyone else would walk right past.
So he solves mysteries from a place of intellectual comfort, really. He relies on the fundamental fact that human chaos, no matter how messy, always leaves a logical trail.
Precisely. His tools are purely sensory and cognitive. His primary assets are listed as his sharp eyes, his keen ears, and a mind that views human puzzles as the only true sport. He's a synthesizer, not a searcher.
What do you mean by that? A synthesizer?
He doesn't just look for clues. He takes all the jumbled, often contradictory data, what witnesses say, what the physical evidence suggests, and he demands that it align into a single, cohesive narrative. If the facts refuse to align, he knows the facts, or at least the interpretation of them, must be wrong.
So this very ordered mind is invited into this world of tradition, of old money. The invitation comes from Lady Beatrice Carrington, an old family friend.
Right, and even the letter is described as thick and creamy, which immediately signals the formality and wealth of the occasion, her 80th birthday gathering at Blackwood Manor.
But the real pull, the reason Finch actually accepts the invitation, isn't just the party. It's the presence of the Serpent's Eye diamond.
And this isn't just a large piece of jewelry, it's a piece of history, and it's steeped in myth. It's legendary for its size, often compared to a pigeon's egg. Its spectacular, rare, deep blue color, and of course, its unique cut.
Let's talk about that cut. The name itself, the Serpent's Eye, is so evocative.
It is. The source notes describe the diamond's spectacular cut as resembling a coiled snake. And at the very center, a single, massive, brilliant facet serves as the eye.
Wow.
This artistry gives it a value that's far beyond its mere carat weight. But the diamond also carries a dark reputation. The notes specifically mention stories of misfortune surrounding it.
So it's a cursed object, or at least it's believed to be.
It's believed to be, yes, which instantly elevates the stakes here. This isn't just a high-stakes theft of an asset. It's the capture of a fateful, maybe even dangerous object. It feels almost mythic.
And the illusion of security surrounding this ill-fated, stunning gem is really where the puzzle begins.
Yeah.
What did Finch observe about the security when he first arrived at the manor?
The diamond was housed in a large, very heavy glass display case. The core security measure was a special custom-made lock. Highly intricate, not something you could easily bypass. Lady Beatrice made a point of showing that she was the only one who held the key. It was perpetually fastened to a gold chain around her neck. And critically, Finch, our expert in systematic order, he initially examined the lock himself.
And what was his verdict?
He deemed it very secure.
And that initial verification from Finch is so important to the narrative, isn't it?
It's everything, because it establishes the impossibility of the crime from the outset. The thief isn't just overcoming a simple lock. They are defeating a system that a master detective have already signed off on.
So the thief is, in a way, challenging Finch directly.
Yes. They're basically saying, your initial assessment of the security was correct, yet I still defeated it without any brute force. This confirms that the crime required highly specialized knowledge, which immediately eliminates any casual, opportunistic thief right from the start.
And the setting itself, Blackwood Manor, it works as this kind of counterpoint to the chaos that's about to unfold.
It's a visual metaphor for entrenched order. The manor is described as magnificent, ivy-covered, built of dark gray stone, and it's nestled in the green, rolling English countryside. It's centuries old, defined by rigid, predictable routine.
Everything in its proper place.
Everything. The grand, historical consistency of the house contrasts so sharply with the impending violent disruption of this crime. The thief understands that if you disrupt a world with such a fixed routine, you create maximum confusion. And that confusion is their greatest asset in the immediate aftermath.
The weight of tradition acts as a kind of psychological barrier.
Absolutely. It makes people less likely to believe that a crude, simple breach could have even occurred. They'll look for a complex solution.
So Finch arrives, he's cataloging the physical order of the manor, he's implicitly trusting the systems in place, only to find himself moments away from a crime that will shatter that very order.
And his observations begin immediately. During the afternoon tea sandwiches, scones, jam, and cream, he's watching the small group gathered for the birthday. This tiny group of people, they are the entire universe of suspects.
Which allows him to focus all of his observational power.
Exactly.
So let's break down the prime candidates. First up, we have Edward Carrington, the nephew. He carries the most classic and, frankly, the most obvious motive.
Edward is the picture of surface elegance. He's described as handsome, expensively dressed, but Finch immediately notices the tension underneath all that.
How so?
The source notes highlight his restless eyes and nervous habits, specifically the tapping of his fingers on his porcelain teacup. And Lady Beatrice mentions, rather dismissively, that he's helping manage the estate, but her tone suggests he's a massive financial drain, not an asset.
So he's the immediate glaring red herring. The motive is financial stress.
The desperate relative on the verge of ruin, a classic trope.
Okay, suspect number 2 is someone with a very different kind of motive. It's not about money, it's about passion. Mrs. Isabelle Dubois.
Dubois is the professional expert. She's a highly sophisticated art and jewelry appraiser from Paris, and she's been brought in to officially value the Cirquin's eye for insurance purposes.
So she has legitimate access.
Legitimate access, and she presents as impeccably professional, calm, stylish. Her presence is critical because she introduces an element of specialized knowledge. She knows the precise value, the history, the provenance, and most importantly, the potential black market network for such a rare item.
And then we have the household staff. They have the most intimate knowledge of the manor's routines.
First is Giles, the butler. He served Lady Beatrice for 42 years. He is the personification of calm, almost mechanical professionalism.
So he's seen everything.
Everything. He's presented as intensely loyal, almost like family, which would typically place him above suspicion. But his longevity means he has comprehensive, almost total control over the Manor's day-to-day logistics. He's the human embodiment of the Manor's rigid order.
And finally, Clara, the new maid.
Clara is the essential counterpoint to everyone else. She's new, she's hardworking, and she's responsible for cleaning the library, the very room where the diamond is kept.
So she has access and opportunity.
And she's easily overlooked. A low-status individual whose observations might be dismissed by the high society guests, but her presence is a key variable.
So Finch isn't just waiting for the crime to happen. He's already building this motive grid during dinner. What were the behavioral clues that solidified his initial profiles of the suspects?
Well, the dinner conversation provided almost instant confirmation of financial urgency. Edward spoke worriedly of a business investment that needed a huge injection of capital, and he emphasized how immediate his need was.
So pure, desperate financial motive.
Textbook. But in contrast, Miss Dubois' focus on the display case was different. It wasn't just a glance. The source describes her intensity as more than just professional interests.
It's an obsession.
It hints at an aesthetic or intellectual obsession. She was hungry for the object itself, not just the money it represented.
So we have desperation from Edward, obsessive knowledge from Dubois, and total logistical access from Giles. The atmosphere is just thick with this underlying tension, even as Lady Beatrice assures everyone the gem is safe, touching the key around her neck before she retires for the night.
And then the explosion of chaos. The next morning, that calm is instantly shattered, as the source puts it, by Clara's scream.
The diamond is gone.
Gone.
And here we face the foundational paradox of the case. The diamond is missing, but the core facts are just impossible. The glass was intact.
Not a mark on it.
The special lock was open.
But not forced.
And Lady Beatrice's key was still around her neck, exactly where she had left it.
And this is where we need to do our own deep dive into the psychology of the locker room mystery itself. This crime isn't defined by what was taken, but by how the thief manipulated the immediate investigation.
Okay, let's unpack that. If the key is there and the lock is open, the thief is intentionally creating this impossible narrative. Why would they do that?
The key word is misdirection. The thief understands that by presenting the situation this way, they force investigators, including a brilliant mind like Finch, to focus entirely inward, on the room itself.
So the immediate logical conclusions are what?
They're limited to two highly technical possibilities. One, a flawless key duplication was made, which would require significant skill and, crucially, access to Lady Beatrice's key for at least a brief time.
Or two.
Two, the thief possesses some kind of specialized knowledge to bypass that intricate lock mechanism entirely, maybe using a specialized rake or a tension tool, leaving no visible marks.
And the moment the detective starts obsessing over that internal mechanism, what does the thief gain?
Time and distraction. A huge amount of both. If Finch spends all his energy trying to figure out who could have duplicated the key, a highly technical and very time-consuming line of inquiry, he misses the more fundamental possibility that the entire premise of the locked room is flawed. It's a magic trick. The thief uses the complexity of the lock as a shield to deflect attention from the possibility of a simpler external breach, which, if sealed correctly, leaves just as little evidence as a perfectly picked lock.
So the paradox is an illusion. It's designed to buy the thief a crucial 24 to 48 hours before anyone even thinks to look outside.
Exactly. The intellectual challenge isn't solving the lock, it's challenging the story the thief is telling you about the lock.
So Lady Beatrice, showing this steely resolve, she commands that nobody is to leave the manor.
Yes, and Finch takes charge immediately. He starts establishing a precise timeline for the previous night. Eventually, Inspector Davies arrives. He's the representative of standard police procedure, but he's quite happy to defer to the renowned Mr. Finch.
Which gives our detective the space he needs to pursue his more unorthodox, behavior-focused lines of inquiry.
Absolutely. And he starts with Edward Carrington, the most obvious financial motive. Edward is the perfect distraction because his guilt is just so plausible.
Finch has already cataloged his behavior as restless, and now, in the interview room, he's visibly flustered.
He can't sustain eye contact. His alibi is textbook weak. He says he went directly to his room, spent an hour reading business papers.
Which is a perfect activity to feign diligence.
Exactly. And then he says he went to sleep. Crucially, it's all unconfirmed, and he claims to be a heavy sleeper who heard absolutely nothing.
So Finch immediately confronts him with the core of his desperation. He doesn't just dance around it.
No, he goes right for the jugular. He doesn't just ask about the investment, he asks about the deadline for the capital.
And Edward's reaction.
The source notes detail it perfectly. He jumps to his feet, knocks his chair back slightly, and there's this flash of anger that's just masking pure fear. He screams denial, but the level of his anger just confirms the severity of his financial bind.
So Finch notes that Edward has the motive of desperation, which usually drives people to messy, unsophisticated crimes.
But he wonders if Edward has the skill required to defeat such a specific high-end lock. Edward's desperation serves as an excellent emotional distraction for everyone else.
And I have to ask the devil's advocate question here. Given how desperate Edward is, couldn't the crime have been just a lucky, messy, external smash and grab that somehow only looked like a perfect lockpick? Why does Finch immediately assume high sophistication?
That's a key point. Finch is relying on his initial observation of the crime scene. He saw no scratch marks, no file marks on the lock, no residual glass powder. The technical perfection of the crime scene itself suggests expertise.
Which immediately makes him question if Edward, the nervous wreck, could have pulled it off.
Right. Finch notes that Edward's motive is strong, but his hands are too visibly shaky to perform that kind of delicate work. He keeps Edward under observation, but his instinct suggests the true thief is calmer, more controlled.
So next, Finch moves to Giles, the butler, the keeper of order, and the only person who can officially confirm the locked room setting.
Giles is the most reliable witness because his entire life is routine. He confirms his 42 years of loyalty to Lady Beatrice, and this is where the narrative of the locked room is solidified.
What does he say?
Giles states unequivocally that he personally locked the library's double doors from the outside after everyone had retired at 11 p.m., and that he unlocked them promptly at 7 a.m. for Claire.
Which confirms it. The thief was either a phantom, an intruder who managed to hide for hours inside the room, or someone who breached the exterior without anyone noticing.
And Giles provides the very first sensory anomaly that contradicts the idea of a quiet, perfectly sealed night.
The light.
The light. Giles reported seeing a light, like a small torch, moving around in the garden area just outside the library sometime past midnight. He dismissed it, assuming it was Thomas Green, the gardener, working late in the orchid house.
And this is Finch's first crucial data point that contradicts the sealed environment. The light introduces the possibility of external movement right around the time of the crime.
Yes, and Giles also proves to be a shrewd behavioral observer himself, confirming Finch's own initial instincts about the guests.
He's an expert in manner protocol, so he notices deviations.
He certainly does. He confirms Edgar's urgent phone calls and his constant worry, but his observations regarding Mrs. Dubois are far more revealing.
What did he notice about her?
He noted her hunger and passion for the diamond. He said it made him uneasy. Giles recognizes that the quiet, professional appraisal was just a veneer, overlaying a far deeper, almost covetous interest.
And for Finch, this shifts Mrs. Dubois from just a professional to an expert who is driven by obsession.
Precisely. Which brings us to Isabelle Dubois herself. She maintains this icy control, describing the theft as a professional tragedy for the art world.
She uses her professional capacity to distance herself from the crime.
Immediately. She immediately shifts the profile of the thief, confirming it must be a professional who understands the diamond's unique provenance. She explains that a knowledgeable thief would sell it on the private black market and never recut it, because the loss of its historical identity would destroy its unique value.
So she's essentially establishing the exact profile that she herself fits.
Exactly. High expertise, high connections, deep historical appreciation. She's painting a self-portrait.
And her alibi is almost identical to Edward's in its weakness. Working on reports, then reading a book, all unconfirmed. And her room overlooked the main drive, seemingly far from the library.
The distance of her room is a calculated distraction. She wants Finch to believe she was tucked away on the complete opposite side of the sprawling house. Finch challenges her on her fervor, noting that her description of the gem sounds more like a lover discussing their object of affection.
And her response.
Her controlled response, calling the idea of a crude thief getting the gem sickening, only reinforces the depth of her intellectual obsession.
And this is where Finch makes the observation that ultimately cracks the entire case, seemingly by accident. As Ms. Dubois leaves, he focuses on a completely irrelevant piece of physical detail.
The distinctive buttons. Finch noted her stylish, dark gray coat featured several large, very distinctive buttons made of dark, polished wood.
Why does he even notice that?
Because it's an anomaly in the antique setting of Blackwood Manor. It's a piece of bespoke, modern elegance. Finch files this away not because he thinks she's guilty yet, but because it's a piece of highly specific, non-generic information. It's an identifying marker, just waiting for the right context to appear.
It's fascinating how his mind works. He's looking for unique markers, things that can't be mistaken for something else. That button is effectively a personal fingerprint left on a piece of clothing.
Exactly. And now, moving into the final stage of interrogation, Finch turns to the household staff who were present, but, usually ignored. Clara, the new maid, is terrified.
But Finch's kind encouragement helps her disclose two vital pieces of information.
First, the confirmation of Edward's desperate deadline. The motive is solidified. Clara overheard Edward shouting on the phone the previous afternoon, demanding money by Monday, and then threatening, "If you don't help me, I'll have to take matters into my own hands."
So that confirms his willingness to commit a crime, even if it doesn't prove he committed this one.
Right. It confirms his state of mind. But Clara's second piece of testimony is what provides the decisive shift in the investigation, moving the focus entirely to the outside world.
The shadow.
The shadow. Late at night, Clara saw a shadow standing near the big oak tree, which is directly adjacent to the library bay window, looking out over the back garden.
Which connects immediately with the light Giles saw.
Immediately. Now, Finch has two separate, unrelated witnesses confirming external activity right near the library around the time of the theft.
And the final witness to corroborate this timeline is Thomas Green, the gardener.
And Thomas also provides a perfect alibi for the light that Giles saw. He confirms he was indeed in the garden around midnight, repairing a loose pane of glass in the orchid house, which accounts for the light.
So that eliminates Thomas as the shadow.
But it places him precisely in the area at the time of the crime. And more importantly, Thomas confirms hearing a noise. This is key clue number 2. The snap.
The snap.
He described it as like a small branch snapping, coming from near that same big oak tree, which he just dismissed as a fox or maybe a badger.
Okay, let's pause here because this is the intellectual heart of the entire case. Finch now has 5 critical circumstantial pieces of data. The light from Giles and Thomas, the shadow from Clara, the snap from Thomas, and then the internal motives, Edward's desperation and Dubois' obsession. Why did Finch decide to prioritize those 3 external atmospheric clues over the highly plausible internal motive of Edward?
This is where Finch's systematic, ordered mind separates him from traditional police work. Inspector Davies would likely dismiss the light, the snap, and the shadow as just noise, unrelated phenomena easily explained by the gardener and local wildlife.
Right, they're just coincidences.
But Finch knows that sophisticated criminals rely on complexity and noise to hide their actions. He operates under the principle that if 3 independent senses, sight, sound, and spatial awareness, all converge on a single location at a single time, that convergence is statistically more reliable than any single self-serving alibi.
So he trusts the triangulation of that sensory data more than he trusts the psychological plausibility of his prime suspect.
Exactly. Edward's desperation provided the perfect theatrical drama the thief wanted everyone to focus on. But those 3 external clues provided an alternate, completely overlooked narrative of entry and exit. Finch trusts the pattern. The shadow, the snap, and the light all point precisely to one spot, the oak tree, just 20 feet from the library bay window.
So he acts on this synthesis, and he takes his walk outside.
The investigation finally moves from the intellectual arena to the physical. Finch walks to the oak tree, where the ground is slightly damp from the night before.
And what does he find there?
First, he finds Thomas Green's large, easily identifiable boot prints, which confirms the gardener's alibi. But right next to those, he finds the crucial set of prints. Smaller, more elegant, and lighter prints. They lead directly toward the library window, they pause, and then they lead away again.
And these prints confirm Clara's shadow was real and was actively approaching the exterior of the so-called locked room.
Yes, and they immediately narrow the suspect pool away from the 2 primary male suspects.
How so?
The elegance of the prints points to high-quality, stylish footwear, not Giles' practical service shoes, not Clara's work boots, and not Edward's heavier leather shoes. They point directly to Miss Dubois' sophisticated Parisian style. The prints aren't definitive proof of her guilt yet, but they are definitive proof of a female presence at that window.
And then, the pièce de résistance, the physical evidence that finally links the external movement to the internal suspect.
Near one of the fainter footprints, half hidden beneath a damp oak leaf, Finch discovers a small, ordinary object, a dark, polished wooden button. It's small, almost insignificant, but Finch's mind immediately connects it back to his earlier, seemingly irrelevant observation.
The distinctive buttons on Miss Dubois' stylish, dark gray coat.
And the pieces just click into place with this stunning finality. Dubois, the expert, was professional enough to defeat the lock and set up the perfect illusion, but her expensive, stylish, distinctive coat betrayed her.
So the alignment is now complete.
It's perfect. The light, the shadow, and the snap confirm the external activity. The footprint confirms a small, elegant figure approached the window, and the button provides undeniable personal identification. The thief was defeated not by a brilliant counter trick, but by gravity and a loose thread.
It's a powerful lesson in investigative priorities. The entire elaborate charade of the locked doors, the key duplication, the internal tension, it was all designed to make Finch look inside.
But the answer was outside, in the mud, in a piece of fashion that was just too distinctive for its own good.
So with the button securely in his possession, Finch returns to the library. And this is his ritual of synthesis.
He calls for Giles to prepare his final cup of tea Earl Grey, the aroma of bergamot. It's not for enjoyment, it's a deliberate mechanism for clear, methodical thought right before the final confrontation.
The reevaluation of the suspects begins now with the physical proof in hand.
Finch confirms his earlier suspicion. Edward has the desperation, the motive, but he lacks the surgical skill, and, crucially, he lacks the specific physical evidence that places him at that window.
Giles is discounted due to decades of unflappable loyalty. Clary is too timid.
And that leaves Miss Dubois. She has the intellectual obsession, the connections to fence the diamond, and the required specific opportunity.
And that opportunity was her access to the specialized lock mechanism during her appraisal.
Exactly. She spent days evaluating the gem inside that case. She would have had ample opportunity to create an impression of the key or to map the intricate workings of the lock, which would be impossible for an outsider like Edward. This makes her the prime candidate for creating that open lock, present key paradox.
Finch then verbalizes the moment of insight he had. The locked library doors and the key mystery were just an illusion. A piece of theater.
And this is the definitive shift. Finch stops trying to figure out how the lock was picked and starts asking why the thief wanted him to think the lock was picked. The focus shifts entirely to the window and the specialized knowledge required to open it.
So let's detail Finch's final reconstruction of the crime. How did he see it happening?
The theory is flawless. Mrs. Dubois copied the key at some point during the appraisal process. Late that night, likely after midnight, she slipped out of her room, which, while it faced the main drive, offered a direct route around the side of the house to the library bay window near the oak tree.
So she approached the window, confirming the faint footprints.
Right. And old manor house windows often have these specific, tricky mechanisms, sometimes a complex latch or an interior locking pin, that can be manipulated silently from the exterior if you have the right tool.
A long, thin, specialized tool, like a piece of wire or stiff metal.
Something that wouldn't leave scratches on the frame. She uses this specialized maneuver to get inside the library. Once inside, she uses her copied key to open the display case silently, she extracts the serpent's eye, and she prepares to exit. The actual time she spent inside the library was probably minimal, maybe 2 minutes, tops.
And how does she ensure the locked room illusion holds true when she leaves?
After exiting through the bay window, she carefully used that same long, thin tool to close and latch the window from the outside, making sure the seal was perfect and the mechanism was engaged. This confines the illusion of external non-entry. She then begins her retreat back toward the manor's main entrance.
The ultimate professional, undone by the simplest of human errors.
And the flaw occurs precisely where the 3 witness testimonies converge. As she stood under the oak tree, the shadow that Clara saw, the soft ground caused her to stumble momentarily. Perhaps she brushed against the trunk.
The snap that Thomas heard?
That's the snap. And in that tiny fraction of a second slip, the threads of the distinctive wooden button on her expensive coat snapped, and the button fell silently into the mud. A detail so small it was almost impossible to find, yet completely definitive once it was.
So the stage is set for the reveal. Finch gathers all the suspects and, in classic deductive style, he controls the flow of information.
He begins by publicly dismissing Edward Carrington as the thief.
Which is a brilliant move.
It is. It immediately relieves the tension on the most obvious suspect, and it completely refocuses everyone's attention. He states the crime was one of professional genius, not desperation. He then explains the core mechanism. The theft was an outside job, achieved through the window, making the locked doors a magnificent but ultimately irrelevant distraction.
And then comes the moment of truth.
Finch produces the button. He holds up the small piece of dark, polished wood, explaining its origin found in the mud under the oak tree. And you can just imagine the sheer weight of that physical evidence tied to the exterior location hitting everyone at the same time.
He directs his attention specifically to Miss Dubois.
He does. He notes that the distinctive button matches her stylish, dark gray coat, which he had made a point of observing earlier during her interview. The expert's composure finally breaks.
The tension in that room must have been staggering, as every single eye turns to the sophisticated appraiser.
And Finch asks her, very simply, to show him her right sleeve. Her control just shatters. She holds out her arm, revealing the undeniable proof. A missing fourth button, the tiny broken thread still visible on the cuff. The perfect crime failed due to a flaw in her tailoring. She's trapped by an object she deemed too insignificant to ever worry about.
The aftermath is quick and satisfying. Ms. Dubois is arrested on suspicion of theft, and she offers no resistance. But the diamond is still missing.
But Finch, operating entirely on his synthesis of her character, the obsessive collector driven by knowledge, already knows she wouldn't discard the gem or sell it immediately. She values the object itself far too highly.
So he knows where it is.
He has a very good idea. Inspector Davies's men search her belongings, and they find the serpent's eye diamond exactly where Finch predicted, hidden in a secret compartment in the bottom of her jewelry case, perfectly concealed for transport once the storm had passed.
And just like that, order is fully restored.
Mhm.
Lady Beatrice expresses her profound gratitude for Finch's intellectual precision.
What this case really demonstrates is the ultimate value of observational rigor. Finch's methodology demanded that he accept the convergence of all these small, seemingly unrelated facts, the light, the snap, the shadow, the button, the footprint, and prioritize that narrative of external breach over the more plausible but ultimately misleading internal paradox of the locked room.
Mr. Finch concluded his notes with a statement of pure finality. The case of the missing diamond. Closed. It's just a perfect illustration of how logic, guided by a mind that craves order, can take utter chaos and meticulously put a small piece of that chaos back in order. The brilliance wasn't in the execution of the crime, but in the expert's fundamental mistake. Assuming that her sophisticated knowledge of locks and art would somehow protect her from simple, external physical clumsiness.
Indeed. We often chase the most obvious financial motive, like Edward's crushing debt. But this crime was driven by something far more dangerous. The specialized, obsessive passion of an expert collector who had access to the prize.
Her motive wasn't simply money.
No, it was the desire to possess history itself. And that deep internalized knowledge allowed her to perform the impossible theft, but it also blinded her to the very real possibility of a physical slip-up.
So we'll leave you with this provocative thought for your own complex challenges, whether they're professional or, personal. The case of the serpent's eye was undone by a unique button falling off a coat and landing in the mud. In your own life, when you're facing a confusing challenge, what small, seemingly irrelevant detail, a passing comment, a subtle habit, a piece of physical residue, are you currently overlooking because you're too focused on the grand theatrical illusion of the locked room? What thread is visible but dismissed because it seems too ordinary to matter? Go back and look at the noise, because the answer is almost always hiding in the data that everyone else throws away.